And
I
I
think too
hid
with
in the
history, I think it
stars.
depends on who's telling the story, right?
Sure. Well, the victors tell the
Thing is,
stories, right? Yeah, the
yeah,
victors tell the stories.
yeah. So, how we may understand things based on what we were taught may look very, very different from another perspective. And actually, I think that's a great segue for today's topic about listening actively. I know we usually do two questions, but I feel good about the one. I feel good about it. We're not known for structure, just FYI. We keep it real. So we're keeping it real, but thinking about like that idea of listening actively, one of the other competencies for coaching, since we've been going through the coaching competencies. Um, One of, I think, the biggest challenges with society right now and where we're at as a country, where we're at as people, as a world, is that we don't listen to each other anymore. And everybody's fighting so hard to be right. Everybody's fighting so hard to, um, their way is their way of thinking is the right way of thinking. Like we're so polarized in everything that it's really hard for people to really listen to people to understand where they're coming from. It's almost always a fight to listen just enough to prove you wrong and prove me right. And like one of my biggest, like I guess the complexity that I always struggle to understand about like the human condition and where I really have a hard time with like oppression and people like arguing their privilege and like not be people not having the capacity to think like let's have equal rights, like you have a right to live your life the way you want just in the same way I have the right to live the way like we can have equal rights. It doesn't take away anything from either person. I think there's just so much room for everybody to succeed and everybody to be happy. It's not competitive. There's not like a limited amount of joy in the world that um if I'm joyful, then that takes away from your joy. Like that's not true. Like it's infinite. And I think that everybody's coming from such a scarcity mindset. There's just not enough to go around that I have to preserve it for myself. there's enough there's enough jobs for people to be successful. There's enough resources for the most part for people to be able to share. There's enough joy to go around. There's enough misery to go around. Like we're not lacking in terms of quantity. And that's where listening actively really helps you understand somebody else's perspective and you don't have to agree. Like, I don't have to buy into your mindset to know you still have a right to do so, as long as you, in your mindset, are not taking away rights of other people. I think that's where I struggle, and where I'm like adamant, like absolutely not. You can think that way, but you can't think that way and take away the rights of other people. Especially when it comes to like politics. Like you can believe in whatever candidate, or you can believe in whatever politicians you want to. That's our right. As Americans, you get to choose sides, right? Even though at the end of the day, we're all playing the same game. We're all trying to live happy and free and all of those things. But where I really struggle with understanding the other perspective is, again, you believe what you believe, which is fine, but you want other people to not have that same choice to believe what they believe. And that's where I really have a hard time with that. And I'm trying to listen actively, trust and believe. I'm really trying to like understand mindset, but there's so much like cognitive dissonance that happens that objectively my brain is having a really hard time like connecting all of that together. And I do get very judgmental, right? Like visceral reactions to certain like keywords or colors of hats. You have a problem with flat bill hats. I have a problem with a certain color of hats because it viscerally what I see or what my bias is telling me is that you're a person who doesn't believe that everybody has the right to live their own life in the way that they see fit, and that you're actively pursuing systems that tell people that they're not allowed to be who they are. And I have a real challenge with that. And so when it comes to like listening actively, I want to understand where you're coming from. I really do. But I may never be able to reconcile with that and be like, oh, that makes sense to me. I still think you're wrong. I understand where you're coming from. And I still think you're wrong. And I still think you're wrong. especially when it's like actively going against people's like your own best interests, like your own best interests.
Yeah,
Like I'm a woman. I'm a woman. I want to have rights over my own body. That's really important to me to have bodily autonomy. I want to be able to do what I want to do with my own body. And I have a really hard time thinking, oh, that's regulated in certain places. I may not have choice to do what I want to do with my own body. That's really hard for me to understand how anybody could be like, no, you decide what to do with my body. It's fine. I trust you. Trust you to decide what's best for my like that to me I just have a really hard time like reconciling that as much as I want to listen actively. I can hear you. I don't have to agree with you though. And I think that's a huge piece of listening.
sure. That's the hardest piece of listening. The hardest piece of listening, just even on a practical level, getting past the sociological issues that we've already talked about, where I believe something and you believe something different, but I'm not going to allow you to believe it, even though I should be able to believe what I want. Is how often does this happen, Tiff, where somebody's talking to you about something that they're dealing with, and you have an answer to their problems right off the bat? Like within the first 10 seconds, 20, you're smart, you're bright, you pick up stuff, you've been experienced, you know what happened, right? Your friends, your kids, colleagues come to you, I'm frustrated with this and this is annoying. And how often we say, oh, you know what you can do? You can go here, you can go there, you can go to, Safemart or Costco has this for on sale, or this is what you need to do, and go talk to this person and tell them how you feel, and blah, blah, blah. And
Immediately.
what's that?
Immediately.
Immediately. Yeah.
Mhm.
And what happens if they already know the answers to this stuff and they just want to get it off their chest, right? And just maybe they're frustrated, just like you are, when somebody is not allowing somebody to express who they are as a human being. It puts you in a negative space and you talk about it, just like we just did, right? And what if I said, well, here's what you should do. You should do this. You should do that. You should do this. No, it's right. No, look, I've tried it, or I know what we can do, but here's the obstacles, right? You're not listening to me. How often do you feel like people aren't listening to you, right? And so why? Because our brain is wired to believe what we believe, right? There's a concept called epistemic privilege, which is my knowledge base is based off of what I know, what I've been taught, what I've researched, and what I've experienced in my life. And so everything that I approach as a problem to solve or a task to accomplish or complete is based off of my knowledge base. So my answers are personal. Well, here's how I would do it, right? And a lot of us have been taught that is I mean, that's a great way to approach problem solving, rather than saying, well, this is what you need to do. Well, here's how I would do it, which sounds more neutral, right? But what's the next step? Rather than saying, this is what you need to do to go to that next, well, here's how I would do it. So I'm not going to tell you you have to do it this way, but this is how I do it. What's that next approach? That intentionality that goes into this person is experiencing something. What do I need to know? What do I need to listen to? What do I need to hear? What do I need to see and experience in what they're telling me to be able to not just understand what they're dealing with, but to empathize with them without judgment. And the judgment very often is this is what you need to do. Right? And that's hard. That's hard, especially if you've been a parent, right? We are predisposed to have parental urges. I was listening to a podcast and reading a book that talks about this. I think I might have mentioned it already. Um, and it's can't remember the name. I think it's called Beyond the Bookstore or something else like that. And Beyond the Magic Shop, right? And so this guy who's a neuroscience scientist talking about the idea of being intentional and having that intentionality mindset, which leads to being able to manifest things in your brain. He says that us as parents, especially mothers, have a maternal instinct, have a familial instinct where we want to protect our young. And so we want to alleviate pain. We want to alleviate their challenges, right? And so as a result, we want to solve their problems. We want them to not have to experience the things that we had to experience, right? And some people don't have that, but a lot of people do, right? And so, if you've been, I know plenty of people. My mom, I love her to death. She is so many people's moms. Her birthday was on Monday, and I've got so many people posting on Facebook. I put a picture, wish my mom a happy birthday. So many people that I grew up with on the block I grew up with, and my schools that I went to, the boys chorus, everyone's happy birthday, Mama Denise, right? She was, an important person to a lot of my peers. And when I wasn't there to mom anymore, she had my two cousins. She raised my two cousins, and she took care of my grandmother, and she took care of, she helped out one of my uncles for a long time, right? And so she's constantly in this mode. I mean, her job, she's 73 now and still takes care of elderly folks. And some of them are younger than her, right? Um, because she has that instinct, and just the way that she does it is, it's well-meaning, and she's got a great heart, but it's, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. And, you know, there's a lot of folks who just will go with that, right? Because that's how we've been taught, right? We've been taught to respect our elders, right? Kids are better seen than heard. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, right? All those things. Or we've been taught biblically, right, that it's a man's world, right? And that the levels of dominance and subservience, right, and all these other things like that, that we have been taught, like I said, biblically, familially, within our society, right? I mean, for the first 300 years of our American existence, white men were the only ones who were allowed to vote. White men with who own land were allowed to vote, right? I mean, you know, the slaves got a chance. The male slaves, freed slaves, got a chance to vote after the Civil War, but Jim Crow knocked that down. Right? Women didn't get a chance to vote until 300 years, 1920, 300 years after we started the colonies. So our society has been built on one group of people having a say for 300 years, right? How easy is that to knock down? And we've seen things to knock it down, but I mean, still, it's, like I think I probably already mentioned, for every dollar a white male makes, a woman makes 84 cents. A black woman makes 68 cents, and a black trans woman makes 48 cents to the dollar, right? So we give you equal rights. Equal rights is different than accessing societal privilege. You have the right to be yourself, but that does not mean that yourself is going to be the key to unlock the door to the vault that has all of the wonderful things that our society can provide to people, right? And so that's the challenge. And and so, and it's the global thing. Like I said, let me get out my history bag, but just really coming back to who we are as a person. We've been taught these things. And so when we hear other people talking to us, we think we have an answer based off of what we know, what we've experienced. And it gets in the way of us saying, what else do I need to know? Because our brain doesn't want to recognize those things that we don't know about that person. Our brain wants homeostasis, which means we want to know what we want to know. We create those heuristics. We take in all that information, 11 billion bits of information per second, and only 40 of them are conscious. Everything else goes to our subconscious, and we create heuristics, which are little buckets where we put people and things into that remind us of stuff that's happened before so that we can predict behavior to keep us safe. So when we hear something that reminds us of something that we've been able to accomplish, or that somebody else has been able to accomplish, or that we think we have an answer to, the heuristic is already created that goes in that bucket. Our problem solve, oh, this is what you need to do, as opposed to, well, what are some things that you've tried? What are some things that have happened? Talk to me about how you got here, right? Which is a much more inclusive and collaborative way to answer that. And like we talked about in the last class, one of the hardest things that most, and I heard this in the coaching program we've both been through. One of the hardest things for people who are coming in the coaching program is to get more into that why, right? Rather than into the who, rather than the what. There's a problem to solve. We can solve the problem. The who is about, I have a problem and I need to solve it, which means that the way that you solve something may not be the way that I solve it. But our brain wants to say, this is the way to go because we know this. If there's somewhere else, something else that works, that's where we have cognitive dissonance. It doesn't compute. Wait, I've been doing it this way for years and it's worked for me. Why isn't it working for you? Right? I don't understand. When you tell me that you're followed as an adult, you're followed. I guess I just happened to me. I was in Reading, right? Wonderful, beautiful Reading. And I went to go get my free coffee on Monday. It was, Starbucks free coffee day. And I went to the bathroom first and I was traveling. So I was wearing my shorts, flip flops, and a hoodie. And the security guard followed me into the men's bathroom, right? Literally, right? And I mean, he locked eyes on me. There were other people that walked through the door. He locked eyes on me and followed me into the bathroom. And before I went to the stall, I, wanted to make sure who it was. And he goes, "Oh yeah, hi." And he acted like he was washing his hands, and then he left. Right? I mean, these are things that are immediate. That's a bucket. This guy's wearing, he's wearing a hoodie. His hair's messed up. He's wearing shorts and flip flops. He doesn't look like somebody who is going to buy something here. Is he going to use the bathroom? What's he going to do in the bathroom? Right. And then
I'd be wondering
when,
the same thing about you.
and when our brain doesn't have that information, he's going to the bathroom. I don't know what he's going to do in there. Our brain will fill it in with the worst case scenario, our assumptions to protect us, to keep us safe. Right. And so I came out of the bathroom. I went to the Starbucks line, bought, got my free coffee and a free big thing of water because I was traveling. And I looked at the security guard and I did like this and I walked out. Right. And so that's what our brain wants to do. It wants to go to what we think is going to happen rather than saying, oh, okay, so what's what's this person about? Yeah, they're not dressing like it's 45 degrees because if I wear long sleeve pants or shirt, my arms and legs sweat. Sorry, I'm a polar bear, I guess. I don't know. But,
Mhm.
when I'm driving, I want to be comfortable and I'm usually wearing shorts. Right? I don't know what to tell you. But to assume that I'm
Because your legs get humid.
right, but to assume that I'm sus because I'm not dressed or I don't look like somebody or I look like somebody maybe that you have been taught to be suspicious of, your brain goes into a different mode. And that's the same mode we go into when we hear something that we think we have an answer to because our answer is right. And so to be intentional, to lean into that discomfort is antithetical to what our brain wants us to do to stay safe. Leaning into discomfort is inherently dangerous. All right. When we were out in the savannah with the rest of the animals, recognizing things that, didn't look like, what we knew were kept us safe and allowed us to evolve as species. Well, guess what? That's still that's still the first place where we take in information. So we size people up within 7 seconds. It takes 21 seconds for us to decide if we want to hire somebody or not. What happens in the first 21 seconds? Saying hi, right? If somebody doesn't say hi the right way or they're dressed the wrong way, I knew a staff development, you knew the staff development director who used to say, if a man's not wearing a tie teaching my classes in my county, he doesn't teach in my county anymore. Right. And so he's retired, but he used to sit in the back of the class and just make sure you're wearing a tie. So if you don't wear a tie, then you're not a good instructor. It doesn't matter what you have, what your knowledge base is, what you teach, right? And just think about all those things that we've been taught about people. When I was a kid, the only people who had tattoos were bikers and sailors, right? And now everybody's got tattoos. Everybody looks like Post Malone, right? And but that's it's just all those things that we were taught. My dad taught me anybody who sags their pants is dressing like a criminal. My dad was a cop, right? So that's my mindset. And then I went to go work in welfare to work 20 years later. And could you imagine me if I would have, what he taught me was still there? You think I would have
Mhm.
treated those people who sagged their pants the same way I treated someone who's wearing a collared shirt and khakis, right? So we treat people differently based off of what we assume they're going to do based off of what we know, which is the problem and the challenge with us trying to get to the right mind space to listen actively. And it affects relationships personally, professionally, as a coach, as a mentor, as a leader, as a teacher, as a follower, right? As a student, as a human being. We want to go to the right answer, and the right answer is what we know or what we believe we know. And then once confirmation bias kicks in, good luck trying to change my opinion in my mind. So that's the problem with listening actively. So how do we do it, Tiff? How do we intentionally decide that I want to know more about you, even if what you are, telling me is not my experience or what I know? How do we do that on purpose?
I think part of it is you have to be willing to be like wrong. I don't know how else to say that, that there's this like quest for everybody to always be right. And like what I know is what I know. It's like almost like a fixed mindset. Like what I already
Absolutely
believe to
fixed
be
mindset.
true. Yeah. What I believe to be true is what's true. There's no, like I'm not open to any new information that might change what I already believe to be true. Like almost like it's a threat to your identity. And so I think like the key here is like you have to be willing to like say, I might be wrong. Like I don't want to go all Brene Brown, but it's like that willingness to be vulnerable, to like loosen up your armor a bit and be willing to hear something that maybe you don't love, or to be uncomfortable, or to be in a space of discomfort. And I think most people are just so unwilling to be in that space. This is why we just don't listen to each other. This is also why we don't have community. This is also why we have fear. This is also why we don't listen to each other's stories and like I've never gone to Starbucks and had anybody follow me. But I'm not saying that's not a true story for you. That's part of my privilege of being a middle-aged white woman, the most powerful demographic in the country, you know? Um, so that's my privilege. And I guess what? I wear the same clothes as you. Like I like almost go out of my way to look like a weirdo most of the time. Like if you saw my outfit right now, I'll just describe it to you. I'm wearing a very nice North Face hoodie, black, right? Never
Mhm.
stop exploring, right? And then I also have on these purple and lavender tie-dye sweatpants. And then on my feet, because I'm a classy lady, I have these red buffalo plaid sequined house shoes and no makeup, no makeup. And then, you know, so if I walked into Starbucks, they'd be like, can we get you a pumpkin spice? I don't know what they make any, and I haven't gone to Starbucks in so long, but you know what I mean? Like there would be no issue. I would be able to go to the bathroom without a problem. But that's my experience. And where people stop listening and where they don't pay attention, like Carl, you just told that story, and my brain is like, well, that's never happened to me. You must be exaggerating. Why does everything have to be about race? Why does everything have to be about appearance? Right? Why does everything have to like Carl, you're playing the victim card because that's never happened to me.
Yeah.
That's
And
not
so,
listening.
yeah. And if you do that to me, if you discount my experience, I didn't tell you I was racially profiled. I told you exactly what happened.
Right. Right.
I
But
walked to the bathroom.
my brain went to,
Right.
oh, well, I mean, not my brain, but I'm just saying
Yeah. Yeah.
the story. So,
Right.
so yeah, but that's honestly where people add to like their interpretation and it doesn't always match the
Yeah.
storyteller.
Well,
But that's
it
where
can't
I could have
happen.
checked.
Right?
Right. But
Yeah.
that's where I could have checked in and I might have said to you, so Carl, that's an interesting experience. I've never had that experience. What do you think it was about you that made them follow you into the restroom? What's your perspective?
I just found out on Facebook that the one of the rarest combinations of people are left-handed people with green eyes.
Oh
And
shit.
so only 10% of the world is left-handed, and green eyes is um the smallest genotype or phenotype, I think, of eyes, right? So combine the two. Guess what? I'm left-handed with green eyes. That's why. That's why, Tiff. That's why my brain says, so this person is discriminating against me because of my green eyesedness and left-handedness. He must have seen that I was carrying my keys in my left hand. I don't know.
That makes sense, Carl, because I also have green eyes,
See?
but I'm right-handed.
Ah, okay.
Have you tried maybe using your right hand more?
So,
Because I
well,
bet,
that
I
leads,
bet if you started using your right hand more, you wouldn't have those problems anymore. So,
and you know what's funny? We're talking about this, right? So I just for funsies, I joined this group that's on Facebook that said left hand only. And I'm just reading some of this stuff. People are making all these declarations. Oh, left-handers do this, left-handers do that, right? And somebody said, what do you do with your right hand? And I said, well, I write and I eat with my right hand, right? I learned how to write. I used to switch my hands in kindergarten, and I went to Catholic school, and they, would tell me not to use my left hand to write. So I learned to write and eat with my left hand. I kick right-footed. I play tennis right-handed. Don't ask me why. Everything else is left-handed. I throw, I bat, I play golf, I dribble a basketball. Everything else is left-handed. And so then somebody says, well, then you're not left-handed, you're ambidextrous. It's like ambidextrous means that I could write left and right-handed, that I could play tennis right and left-handed, that I could dribble a basketball with my right hand, which I can't. Kicking with my left foot is an embarrassing thing. So, you're telling me that, but that's the definition I've heard of ambidextrous. So your definition of ambidextrous makes you sure that I am no longer left-handed. You see how convoluted and weird that is, right? Where I have I am a certain group of people, but because you don't do exactly what I say, even though we share a lot of type, you're not my type, right? And I'm sure of this in our brain. That's what I know, right? And so it's such a challenge for people to say, wow, so you you're left-handed, but you do these things right-handed. Oh, well, where do you think that came from? It doesn't sound like it's so hard, but it is so hard. It is so difficult, right? To get past what we know as truth and say what other people, they have their own truth, right? And our truth is not absolute truth. What we believe and perceive is real. We have real reactions. We have anxiety. We have, our heart starts racing, hair on the back of our arms stand up, get a pit in our stomach when we're dealing with something. And another person would say, why are you stressing out about this? Relax, right? But our body is reacting in real world situations. But just because it's real, it doesn't mean that it is somebody else's truth. And it's so hard. It's hard for our brain to compute that because our brain wants to predict things so that we can stay safe and we know what to expect. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have now. I mean, we have so much we have so much access to information that we didn't have before. We have all these different TV stations, all these different websites, all these different videos giving us all this different information. When you and I were coming up, I mean, when I was coming up, it was just before cable television got really, prominent, right? And there was CBS, ABC, NBC, and PBS. Wasn't even Fox, right? Wasn't no WB or CW, right? WB still around? I don't think so. But anyways,
well,
but
maybe not.
just yeah, I think it's my TV now. I don't know. Anyway, but there was four places where you could get information. There was newspapers, and you had to hear everything, both sides, people talking about stuff. Now we have so many different options and so many different channels that our brain can go to something that says, yes, I believe this. I agree with this. This is where I want to be. And I'm getting that dopamine rush. I'm getting that serotonin rush, that idea of community. I'm feeling really good about, what I believe because other people believe it too. And we don't have to hear the opposite side. And so we create our bubble. The more information we have, the more we can hear our beliefs and zone out other people's beliefs because we have access to other things. If I don't want to hear that, I can always turn off the channel and go to something that is telling me what I want to hear. And I think that makes it even worse, right? Our brain always wants that homeostasis, but I think the access of, that one-sided information, whichever side you get it from, right, is making it worse because there's always a right side for us. Very rarely, and I know some people who say, well, I like listening to this because it gives me a different perspective, or I like to know what other people are saying or doing. But how many of us actually do that on purpose, right? Or just naturally? We do it on purpose. How often do we do it naturally? Oh, well, there's the other side. And there's a lot of us who say, I want to know about you. That's my first thought. I want to know about you, right? That's not true. My first thought is I don't. That may not be where I'm coming from, which is personal, but this next thought is I want to know about you. How are you feeling about things? I tend to be a little more towards that as an S not in Myers-Briggs, well, as an F in Myers-Briggs and as an S in DISC. I want to know more about that other person. And I want to hear about how you feel about something, what makes you tick, right? That's like I said, that's why I liked history. I want to know the reasons behind things, what caused people to do things, right? It's about other centered, right? But how many people just get stuck in why I need to know what I need to know? I don't have a whole lot of time. So what you're telling me is an issue. Let me just figure this because we don't have a lot of time to talk about it. Let me just, I'm too busy. Right. It's like the same thing. Well, one-on-one conversations, I just don't have time and I don't want to, and I don't want to bug, my staff who, they're so busy. I don't want to have to bug them with, an hour every 2 weeks. Right. Well, what is the study showing, Tiff? An hour every 2 weeks or so is helping people feel like you really give a damn about them, and that you're interested in who they are, and they produce better, they stay longer, right? But we're trying to shut down those resources now in those studies, right? So it's no, we know what we know,
Can
and
we
that's
know
that's
better?
important. And we know better. Yeah, we know better. We know better than those people who study this for a living and are intentionally looking for things that will prove their theory either wrong or right. Right.
It's a lot.
But it is a lot. It's a lot. And I mean, I know we were talking about what active listening is, and you know, there's a lot of things I know you and I both teach a lot of folks about active listening and, you know, um, some of the guidelines that we have for active listening, right? Just being intentional with being there with somebody, right? Paying attention to them and finding out what it is that they're interested in. So just making good eye contact and being present, not looking at your phone, not, even if you're typing in information, right? Letting them know that you're there, right? And so and then using, techniques like the mirroring technique, right? Okay, yeah, I'm here with you, just showing that, if someone's talking about something that's lighthearted, we show interest. If somebody's talking about something that's sad, right, we show concern or empathy, right? And so we can show it non-verbally. We can show it, oh, wow. Oh, geez, I'm sorry about that. Oh, well, how did that make you feel? Tell me more. Our brain does not want us to ask them to tell me more because if it's hurtful, we don't want to hear more about the pain. We want to alleviate that pain, right? And so intentionally, we have to say, tell me more. How did that make you feel? Geez, I'm really sorry. So what are some of the things that you did in the meantime to take care of that, right? Those are conversations that are intentional conversations, right? And then summarizing, right? Letting people know that, hey, I'm here with you. I hear you, right? Those things are, and this is what we're talking about. So you're saying that this is the issue. Is that what I'm hearing from you? Right? When people know that you've heard them and you can summarize that into something that's coherent statement, I mean, how quick are they to say, yeah, yeah, you get it. You get it. Because how often do we have people tell us that they get us, right? Unless we're speaking to people who totally agree with us and everything.
Well,
What do you do?
so like one of my favorite things, I got it from a TED. You know me, I love my TED Talks, but one of my favorite TED Talks is from Celeste Headley, and she has a video like 10, I think it's called 10 Tips to Have a Better Conversation. It's an oldie but goodie. It's like from, I want to say like early 2000s. However, one of my favorite things that she says is like, think about all the tips you've heard about active listening, like nodding your head, thinking of topics in advance, summarizing what you said. And she says, I just want to tell you, all of that's crap. She said the best way to show that you're actually listening to people is to actually listen. And I really like took that to heart because if you're really giving someone your full attention, the head nods, the nonverbal, the eye contact, all of that stuff happens naturally because you're genuinely interested in what they have to say. So I always think about that. Like if I have to think about how do I show this person that I'm listening to them, I'm probably not, right? I'm probably not listening to them if I'm trying to think about how to show that I'm interested. So that's like the first tip for me always is if I don't want to be in a conversation with someone, like don't fake it. Like don't fake it. So I'll give you an example of this. Just the other day, again, right here where we're at, we meet people from all over the place, all over the world. And sometimes we meet really cool people, and other times, like you're not interested, right? You're just not interested. And so we had a gentleman come up to us the other day, and he started a conversation, and he's asking us like what we do for a living and so on and so forth. And so right away, my like intuition, my gut was like, yeah, no, I'm not into this dude. Like he's giving me like a weird like sensation. And I listen to my body, let me tell you, because I love everybody. I love everybody until I don't. And so again, a couple minutes into the conversation, I realized this isn't somebody I want to hang out with. And he kept making weird comments, and I was uncomfortable. But my husband's sitting right next to me, so he's trying to be polite. But active listening, I was actively not listening. So immediately, because he's sitting to the side of us, I just turned my whole body and then just looked in the other direction to kind of signal to him I don't want to engage in this conversation. So I don't want to fake it. I don't want to fake it. I didn't want to talk to him. He was weird. He was giving me the heebie-jeebies, and I was not interested. So from a professional standpoint, I wouldn't do that to a customer, or I wouldn't do it to a coworker or a colleague. I mean, I would probably be like, now's not a good time. But when you're genuinely interested in a conversation, your body shows that, right? Your body shows that, your stance shows that, the way that you engage shows that you're interested. So that's like my first thing is I only participate in conversations where I'm genuinely interested. So if I ever ignore you, like become more interesting. I don't know what to tell you. This is the second thing. Here is I've also learned this technique, which I love, love, love. I got it from this curriculum called World Class Relationships for Work and Home, something I got certified in probably 10, 15 years ago. But they have a component of their course um, where they call it to power listening, not active listening, but power listening. And in your power listening, you cannot jack the conversation. Jack stands for judgment, advice, and questions. And so in your listening, you're not judging what they're saying is right or wrong. You're just trying to understand. You do not offer any advice, and you don't ask questions unless it's to keep the conversation going. So, like, as an example, if you come to me, Carl, and you're like, oh my gosh, Tiff, I'm having this problem with Stacy. And I say, well, who is Stacy to you? And start asking you for more details. I'm not really listening to you to hear what you have to say. I'm listening to try to solve your problem. So I'm like, give me the context I need to solve your problem, which again is going to lead me to giving advice. And so I actually love to do an activity. in some of my communication classes where I have just two people have a conversation and I say, okay, sit face to face. One of you is going to speak and one of you is going to listen. And if you're the listener, you cannot judge, you cannot give any advice, you can't ask any questions. The only thing that you have to do is listen until I tell you to stop. And so I usually give them a prompt, something to the effect of like, talk about a decision that you're trying to make that you're on the fence about. And so what I do is I tell the speaker to speak, but if they feel like they're getting jacked, if they see judgment, like in the facial expressions, if they get offered advice or they ask a question that they hit the table, they say, quit jacking me. It's so much fun. But I make them go until I tell them to stop. And then I ask them, how much time was that? How much time do you think I gave you to talk to each other? And so you hear things 30 seconds, 5 minutes, like it's all over the place. It's always usually around 60 seconds. And then I said, how, like for those of you who were talking, how long did it feel? And many of them were like, oh, it went so fast. I was barely getting into, the details. And then for the listener, how about you? And some people, again, they're like, felt like 10 minutes. Like how often do we not give somebody 60 seconds of uninterrupted time to just talk and be heard, right? And
We
be
don't
heard.
we don't give people a second, right?
Right.
It's I know my thing, that it takes 5 to 7 seconds to formulate a question or a comment on average. And when I give people that silence and they don't know why I'm giving that silence, they all look around at each other like, what is he doing? Why isn't he speaking? Why isn't, and sometimes you get nervous laughter. Sometimes you get people say, no, I don't have anything, right? Like they have to fill that space. And, and then I tell them, how often do we give people that chance to really think about it? If you're an introvert or if you're not a verbal processor, if you process things internally and you want to have a chance to think about the question you want to ask or the comment and exactly how you want to say it, and that person's not giving you that chance, what happens to you for the rest of the conversation? Go ahead, do your thing. I'm just going to sit here because I'm not going to get a chance to even think about what I want to say. So I'm disengaged,
Right.
right? And so, you're talking about that idea of just listening. Yes, it is important to just listen. But if people do not know how to just listen, then you're talking past them, right? Because if I know the way to listen is to listen for your response, to listen to respond. What you're saying, oh yeah, here's what I would do, or I've done that too. Let me tell you about my story, right? Which is how most conversations go, as opposed to, like you said, well, what's going on, and talk to me, right? And you know, tell me more, and allowing for that to happen, right? In coaching, what's that ratio? 85 to 15. The 85-15 ratio is 85% of the time in a coaching conversation, we could be listening, right? I've had conversations where the person speaking to me, I just said, hey, what's going on? And for the next 45 minutes, they talked. And then when we were done, oh, wow, thanks for that. That was great. I've never had anybody just, you know, listen to me like that. And, like you said, I felt like it was a racket. I didn't say anything. I didn't do
Scam.
anything. Right.
Scam.
And, it's like, well, okay, well, but how often do we have people really listen to us and hear us?
Mhm.
Right. Because normally that person's trying to solve our problem, show us what they know to prove us they're equal, or, you know, anything else where we have to fill in that space. And it's so if they think that's what listening is, and they're not told listening, if they think it's okay, hey, do you have do you have a minute? Yeah, I'm working. Go ahead and talk to me. And they're still typing while you're talking. I say, I'll come when you're not busy. Oh no, no, I'm listening. No, actually, you're not, and I really need to talk about something else. So when you have a moment, please come talk to me because I'm not feeling like you're hearing me. And that's the
Well,
important thing. It's about how we feel. We listen for the what and not the who. And if we're not
well,
careful, if we don't pay attention and we show that people that we're paying attention to what they're saying, then they're not going to feel like we're hearing us, like they're hearing us, we're going to feel like we're wasting their time.
Just for the record, passive hearing and active listening are not the same.
Sure.
Not the same. I always have like a little test, and this is where I was like, 'cause I'll just be honest with you. I love background noise when I'm working, right? And I think that I'm a great multitasker, right? Like I can have a TV show on and be typing on at the same time. I can have music going and but the reality is like again, the whole idea of all of this information, these bits of information, you're only consciously processing like 40 of them. The same is true when you're listening to somebody. I can hear you talking, but that doesn't mean I'm listening to what you're saying. And a lot of times people think they're really good multitaskers. I can keep typing this memo or this email while you're talking to me and I'm listening to you, but you're really not because your brain can't do the two things. And so I say, here's a test, right? This is to know if you can do two things at once. If you can be a good listener and do something else, is listen to two songs at the same time. And if you can sing along with both songs at the same time, you're a good multitasker.
Mhm.
But if you can't sing along to both songs at the same time, you're probably not. And so this is why we have to like step away from the keyboard, put our phones down, whatever distraction. If someone comes and says, "Hey, do you have a minute?" You either say, "Yeah, I do," and then give them your full attention, or say, "You know what? I really got to get this done. Can I come find you in 5 minutes?" Or, I got this deadline. Can I talk after lunch? But this whole like, yeah, go ahead. Because here's what we're doing. I'm gonna do my reenactment. Are you ready? I gotta flip my hair for this one. This is what we're doing. We're going, go ahead.
Mhm.
Oh, wait, what? Start all over again? What was that? As soon as something catches our attention, now we want to pay attention. But that person already feels discouraged. And now I have to tell you my whole story again. You weren't listening to me that whole time. And so, I mean, it's give your people your full attention or don't. I mean, are not interested, and that's okay too, or you're busy or something. It's not a good time for you. But like, don't fake the funk. If you're not ready to have a conversation with someone, then don't. But just be upfront about it. But don't be half in. Don't be half in. Be all in or reschedule. I think it's like the biggest disservice we can do to people is say, "I'm going to make time for you," and then that not be the case, right? And then not be the case, or you're not really listening to what they have to tell you. You're on the defense, or you want to prove them wrong. Like you may not agree, but you still have to understand. And I think that's like for me the biggest thing about listening actively. Let me understand where you're coming from. Let me help you feel understood. Here's what I'm hearing. This is what I'm taking away. Can I just clarify with you real quick? Like what I'm hearing you say is, or this is what I'm picking up. What do you think? Like these are questions that I can engage with you and really try to understand and clarify. And if I'm able to do that with you, then chances are when it's now my turn to talk, you'll be more open to what I have to say as well. But again, too often we want other people to understand us, and we put a lot of effort and energy into people understanding our point of view, but we don't reciprocate. And that's why arguments happen. That's why conflict occurs. That's why we have misunderstandings. This is why relationships deteriorate. This is why we have toxicity in the workplace. Like people are just not willing to listen unless, again, you're telling me something that I already want to hear. And that's going to be our destruction as humanity. I mean, honestly, I don't want to get all downy Debbie Downer. Look at the sky's all ominous behind me, but it's the biggest, to me, the biggest challenge in the whole workplace is like people just don't want to hear each other anymore. They just want to be right. And I don't know who said it, but when you want to be right, you become righteous, and that's when you stop learning. Someone smart said that. It wasn't me. I just don't know who it is. But when you want to be right, you become righteous and you stop learning. And I know for myself as who I am and who I want to be and who I strive to be, I never want to be in that space where I stop learning. I have something new to learn every single day. And I love stories. And again, that's why I think I loved history. I love stories. I love to hear people's experiences. I love to hear about people's lives and where they're from and what they're doing and what they believe in. It's just fascinating to me. And the more, I think the more that we listen to people, like the more that we grow as individuals, the more we grow as a collective. And we start to like weave all of these individual threads together into this really beautiful tapestry of life. I've learned more from other people's experience than I think my own. I don't know how that's possible, but it's true. I really do think I've learned more from other people's experiences than I've learned from my own, because in my own I can justify what I did, what I thought, what I was doing. But when it comes to hearing from other people, I have to really be just open to that perspective. I don't have a feeling about it because it wasn't my story. And I think that's fascinating. One of the reasons I think I love being a coach is that I get paid to listen to other people's story. What a scam. You know what I mean? What a scam. But I love it. So if you'd like to get scammed, I mean, if you'd like coaching, www.givingthegiftcoaching.com. Coming soon. Coming soon. No, it's there. No. But no, I think that really is like one of the reasons I got called into coaching. And part of too, and the way that I train and the way that I work in the classroom is through a lot of storytelling and a lot of like discussion and conversation. I think that's where the walls start to break down for people, is when they're able to really engage with other people and listen to those other stories and hear that things are not always the same for everyone. You talked about silos earlier, and like I know it happens, at least in my experience in government, all the time. Like, oh, we're the only department working so hard. Those people over there, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. We're the only ones pulling the team. And then they start to like learn and hear what the other people are doing. They're like, oh, I didn't know you did all that. Oh, I didn't know all that was your responsibility. Oh, I didn't realize that. That's where people really start to grow and start to see perspective, is through those conversations. And so I like to create a space for people to be able to do that. But again, I can lead a horse to water. I can't make him drink, but you can salt the hay and make them thirsty, create those opportunities. Salt the hay, make them thirsty. I got that from Nora Gerber. I didn't make that up. Again, I listen to other people and I steal their good stuff. So that was a good one from her. But
Too much
again,
good.
you create, yeah, but you have to be willing to create those opportunities, both as a coach, as an instructor, as a leader. Like, give people the opportunity to talk to each other and engage with each other. And you have to be, as a leader, as a coach, as a customer service, whatever it is, you have to be willing to listen to people as well, and be willing to challenge what you already believe to be true. Like, again, I love the phrase, "Don't believe everything you think," right? And if it throws you off, like, oh, that's new information, you can always say, "Tell me more about that. I'm interested. I want." Like, that's an interesting perspective. Like, how'd you get there? Be willing to like really understand where people come from, not just, again, I believe you because that's what I already believe, or I disagree with you because I think something different. Like, be interested, be curious, be curious.
As our great American scholar Flavor Flav once said, don't believe the hype.
Don't believe the hype. That's right.
So when we're thinking about coaching and listening, some of the competencies that we talk about with this principle, we talked about being there, paying attention, recognizing, energy shifts and emotions, right? We talked about the who last episode, and engaging in the who, and thinking about why people are feeling the way that they're feeling. And so it really, I like the competencies because it helps if you have a challenge, if you want to be intentional in listening without judgment, without problem solving. Some of these competencies are really, really good to stay mindful of, right? So, just thinking about paying attention to energy shifts. If you're paying attention to somebody's nonverbal messages, that means that you are there with them. I noticed you shifted back in your chair when you said that, or you kind of raised your voice a little bit when you said that, like it was a question. What was there, right? That's how we know that we're there. Also, if you are in a situation where you're hearing somebody and you think you have an answer that's worked for you, think about what the person's saying. Utilize those person's words. Recognize if someone shifts something, if they're talking about something, to be responsive to the coachee, to be responsive to your direct report, rather than if we get in our mindset, we are directing them. I told you that was one of the biggest issues with me that I recognized in the coaching program was that I can lead somebody to the right issue, right? But how do I recognize where they want to go? And that's for me paying attention to that, right? And so just wrapping up with that idea, being intentional when we are performing coaching, right? And
Yeah.
so, we'll definitely talk about that more as we go along, especially when we talk about the next one, which is evoking awareness. But stay tuned, folks. We have a lot of cool and exciting stuff that's coming up. And we're actually going to start having some guests come with
Yeah,
us. So,
I'm
yeah,
so
we are
excited.
we're working on that. So um, we we're definitely excited for that. And Tiff, any final takeaways?
My only takeaway is what I said earlier. That is, if you don't want to be in a conversation, then don't. Just be honest with people. I, you know, depending on your situation, you may not have an option, but if you do have an option, if you don't want to talk to people, then just say that. But if you are going to commit to being in that conversation, then be all in, and give it all of your full attention. And that's where, I think as people, if we really want to grow and heal and maybe get into this next, remember the four turnings, if we want to get into the space of abundance and growth and really that prosperity, we've got to start looking at each other not as enemies, but as people who, again, everybody's trying to live their best life. And they may look different, but let's listen to each other, and hear where each other are coming from and kind of remove some of these barriers that we've created with the feelings, the emotions, the fears, and all of the other stuff that are happening. Um, we all got to live in this world together. Let's make the best of it.
Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. If
That's
somebody's
right.
coming up, they're not
Right.
taking yours.
So
Break them.
listen, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to challenge myself this week. This week, I'm going to challenge myself to have a robust and healthy conversation with someone that I disagree with. I'm going to be a good listener this week. I'm challenging myself to be open-minded and not be um, combative. I'm going to practice what I preach. And so I'm going to challenge myself this week and see what happens.
All right.
See how it
And,
goes.
and I'm going to go challenge to have some lunch and have me a hot
Good.
dog so I can put on some mustard.
Mustard. Dun, 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 dun. You should do that. Sorry, I'm doing the dance. That's why they didn't invite me to the Super Bowl. I'm just saying. They didn't invite me because of my dancing skills. So
And I'm Carl.
I'm Tiff. Keep it real, everyone. Keep it real.
Rio mustard.